that I like to call Vets I Recommend. This is only our second one, so I'm trying to let people know a little bit about why I recommend certain veterinarians. We have with us tonight one of my absolute favorite veterinarians, Dr. Odette Sutter. Hi, Dr. Sutter.
Hello, hi, how are you, Carrie? Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, every time I talk to you and have you around, I learn so much from you, and then I get to teach other people stuff I learned from you. It's pretty amazing. And most of my clients follow me know that we have a hard time finding veterinarians in Orange County, so we have to send charts to you and do things like that. So I just want to thank you so much for being here and just being so free with your time to help educate people about better stuff for their pets. It's just amazing that you're wanting to do that. Before we get started, though, I do want to do a couple. Hi, Pam. We have a couple people coming in. Before we get started, I want people to know a couple things. One, none of the veterinarians that I bring on here can diagnose your pets right here and now. So that's not why either one of us are here. It's just to start conversations about ways that we can do better with our pets. And then the other thing people ask me is like, why do I choose veterinarians? And so first and foremost, I always start with, do I have a holistic veterinarian? That's usually my first question. Dr. Sutter, can you tell us a little bit about your background, just so people kind of know a little bit about how you became a holistic veterinarian?
Sure, definitely. And hi, everyone. I'm sorry if I wasn't quite present. I was trying to cross-post on my Facebook page as well. But hi, Pam Brindle, I know you. Hello. So how did I become a holistic vet? Well, it started really early on. My parents, they were already more naturally oriented, and my mom was using herbs, and we had an organic garden, and the whole taking care of the planet and being more naturally oriented started from a very young age. So it sort of was very natural for me to kind of move into that, even with the animals that I was taking care of before I even went to vet school. I already started doing a little massage on the horses that I was riding, and everybody would ask me, "Oh, is your horse sick?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just giving it a massage." Ever heard of that? But that was like some 30-some years ago or something. So it was all kind of new to people. I mean, back then nobody was talking about holistic medicine much, at least not in Europe. So anyways, I got into that more naturally already, and I always tell people that I was born weird and I only got weirder. And then in vet school, I just was never really happy with what they taught us. I always felt like there had to be more. And in my first job, we were basically using antibiotics and steroids and doing surgery and using pain meds. And then we would repeat the same thing. And I'm like, is that really it? That's just so boring. And it doesn't really address anything. Animals would come back with the same issue over and over again. And I'm like, well, that really can't be it. So I definitely continued on the journey. And my first job was actually with a vet who was doing acupuncture and homeopathy, but he was doing so little of it. And I was so disappointed in my first job because, I had hoped that we would dive right into the whole holistic, and there was none of that much, very on rare occasions that he was actually using it. So it was kind of sad.
You went to school in Switzerland, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is sad, but I think a lot of times, even for me, sometimes when I recommend, I do a lot of like ozone baths, and sometimes people look at me funny. And so it can be a little, I could see why someone's starting out to do holistic. Sometimes they're nervous that the response they're going to get, you never know if someone's going to be open-minded to it or closed-minded to it, if you're going to get backlash. And so I wonder if that many years ago, if that veterinarian was still kind of, I don't know how people feel about me using holistic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was kind of new, and he was just worried. He was a perfectionist as well, and everything had to be done perfectly, and so it was a bit Yeah, but it was disappointing as a new graduate,
Yeah.
and I had picked that particular job because he was doing some of these things, and I'm like, yeah, it was just so disappointing.
Yeah, I could. Well, you're one of the rare holistic veterinarians that I speak with, in that you were already holistic minded. A lot
Mhm.
of the veterinarians I speak with weren't, and then they went to veterinary school and then realized that this wasn't working, and
Mhm.
then decided there's got to be another way. And
Yeah,
they kind of, but all veterinarians go to traditional conventional veterinary school. There's no difference, right?
yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you need to have the basics. You need to learn about anatomy. I mean, you need to have the basics. I mean, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there are definitely vet schools nowadays that have like a holistic track where students get exposed to it. But there's so much to learn just from the conventional side of it, and just the basics of medicine. That it can be overwhelming, and 4 years to learn the basics is already not that long. So then if you're adding all the holistic stuff to it, that's a lot, and that would be very overwhelming. So I think it's good to just focus on one thing and then add some other things to it as you can, and not overwhelm yourself as a student, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot.
How do you how I want to start getting people that are coming in a little comfortable. Sometimes people get a little shy in the beginning to ask questions, but how do you define a holistic veterinarian? Because there's some confusion there. And there's even people who call themselves holistic who I wouldn't define them as holistic. But how do you define a holistic veterinarian?
Well, a holistic veterinarian is definitely somebody who looks at the whole animal. Holistic comes from holism, from looking at the whole picture, and that would include obviously the animal itself, but also the environment it lives in, the family, body, mind, spirit, basically. You would look at all of these things, and it also is a very inclusive sort of way of thinking, so it doesn't exclude things. I mean, for me, even conventional medicine, I need to practice that a bit more, because traditional, what's traditional? I mean, conventional medicine hasn't been out there for that long, so
Right.
you can't really call it traditional. Um, so conventional medicine is part of that, because if an animal is in a lot of pain, we want to give it some pain medication, because otherwise the animal is suffering, and that's not holistic. Suffering is not really holistic in that sense, and it doesn't really contribute to greater health if they're suffering, because it causes a lot of stress, and then stress causes other issues. So just basically including everything. And holistic, the word itself also comes from holy, and looking at, yeah, again, looking at everything, and looking at the body with some reverence as well, because it certainly includes observing the body. It includes asking questions. It includes questioning things, asking why. For the most part, oftentimes, you know, so-called holistic medicine is used as a symptomatic treatment, which that there's nothing wrong with that, but we still need to look at the underlying cause. So, if I were to just look at a dog, let's just say they have GI issues, and I just give an herb for diarrhea, that's not much different than giving metronidazole, in the sense that I'm just treating the symptoms, but I'm not looking at why the dog is having diarrhea. But of course, herbs, I would still go more with natural remedies over, drugs, if I can, if that's applicable. But certainly, yeah.
It's such a good point that you make about the pain, because sometimes people will come to me with these dogs that are, I told you, I saw one of the worst cases I've seen in a very, very long time today, just about an
Mm-hmm.
hour before we went on. And sometimes people think if I send them to a holistic veterinarian, that means that they're going to have to wait years and years and years to get the dog to not suffer. while we burn candles or whatever they think that holistic veterinarians do. But I think a good holistic vet, just like you said, is going to take that dog out of pain while they try to figure out what the cause is, because that stress alone would kind of stand in your way of healing, right?
Right, because when an animal is stressed, it puts them in a sympathetic mode, which is fight or flight.
Yeah.
And that's not a mode of being that supports healing all that much. Parasympathetic nervous system, which is the other branch, kind of the opposite, is healing, relaxing, restoring, digesting. So you want to have, animals be relaxed enough so that they can heal, because if the body is so terribly stressed out, they can't heal that well. And, for example, in dogs that are very itchy, for example, they don't sleep well, they don't sleep enough. I've had dogs where, we basically decreased the itching and or eliminated it, and then they start sleeping, and they sleep for a few days straight, basically, to recuperate and restore. So it's important to improve their quality of life while you're trying to figure out the underlying cause and all of that.
It's so many people, and even veterinarians kind of get traditional veterinarians sometimes, or conventional. I'm doing the same thing. Conventional veterinarians sometimes just think that that's what a holistic vet's going to do is start giving you some crazy herbs, and meanwhile your dog's suffering. And unlike people, our dogs don't live very long, so I don't think at least none of the vets that I recommend would do that to an animal. So I was happy to hear you say that, because it's so important that we learn how and to take these animals from pain. Is there ever a time where you get an animal that you just know that the holistic route just isn't, you don't maybe have enough time for, and we just have to make the dog comfortable? Does that ever happen?
Certainly when they're a little closer to the end of life, but there's always a place for some holistic modalities to be added to it. If the owner is open to it and can afford it, because oftentimes when they've already exhausted every other option, there's also a big drain on the pocketbook. But there's always some support that we can give from a holistic perspective as well, be it acupuncture, a little bit of chiropractic work, or massage, laser therapy, supplements to just support the animal a little bit. So there's still a lot that we can do from that perspective, but we may just have to combine
different stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit. So, for those of you guys who don't know, I know I had posted it a while back, but Dr. Sutter had contacted me and asked me a couple questions about a new course that she's putting together that I just want to say before we talk about this, I did not bring you guys on here to try to, sell you stuff. I brought you on here so you could educate yourself so that your pets live happier, healthier lives. And I just tell me a little bit about this course, because she already has it together, and I'm so excited. This is so amazing. You guys are gonna love this. But she put together a course that you can take to learn what you need to learn about raising your pets. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for bringing this up. It's kind of my new baby.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it because so many people don't know.
Yeah, and thanks for being excited about it. It's nice. Yeah, I mean, it basically came out of, the current situation that we're dealing with, where there are not enough vets, there's not enough availability. Most holistic veterinarians are booked out. They don't take any new clients. And the level of stress with, the whole pandemic and everything has been extremely high for veterinary staff in general as well. And I myself pretty much hit the wall end of last year, where I'm like, I was going into a room with animals and I'm like, I don't really care, because I was so burned out. And so as a result, I just knew I had to change something. So after a day or two of that, I'm like, I can't do this. Something has to change. And so I decided that instead of trying to fix the problem from the inside of the problem, which, generally doesn't really work all that well, I decided to address it from the outside because, a big issue that we're dealing with in the veterinary field is that, people are not educated enough to know what they can do for their animals on, preventatively, but also, for example, if a dog has diarrhea, people need to know that, well, if my dog has diarrhea, I'm just going to give it some bland diet. And if the dog starts moping around, then I'm going to call the vet, if it has a fever or it's not feeling good. So there are a lot of things that people can already take care of themselves and do things about that doesn't necessarily require the vet. And the more they understand about, veterinary care and care for their animals, the more intelligent and more satisfying their communication with the vet can be as well, because very often they don't know what blood work means, what the lab results mean, and that sort of thing. So, there's just a lot of things that people need to learn, especially nowadays, so that they can be more proactive and do more for their animals. And everybody loves their animals, and it's just so heartbreaking to see how things are going these days, with the lack of availability and, being turned away from a emergency hospital with a dog that's, not doing well at all. So that is really challenging. And so
what I love about it is it doesn't just help the pet parent. You're saying, the industry is in a lot of trouble. We've got people using the emergency rooms for non-emergency situations, and it's costing people's dogs their lives because their dog may actually be an emergency. But really, you hit the nail on the head kind of thing with the diarrhea. Is so many times people think, 5 minutes of diarrhea when the dog's running around the house playing with his ball, but he had diarrhea, is an emergency. And so they panic and they end up, calling and yelling at their veterinarian because they can't get in. And then they end up at the emergency room, which ends up costing them a ton of money. And so getting people to kind of go through this is, you guys, I'm just telling you, it's going to save you so much. I would say money. That is true, because you probably won't find yourself at the vet every 5 minutes when you don't need to be there. But I think it's going to save people so much the anxiety of to have somebody like yourself talking about, is this an emergency or not emergency, and all of that. So the course, when they get in it, tell me a little bit about the stages of the course. Like, how does it?
So basically, the course contains 8 modules. So there are 8 lectures where I talk about the different pillars of health. And those are the things that are essential for the body to be able to function properly. So the first lecture is just an introduction where I go into the different things of, what makes a body healthy and what a body needs and what it doesn't need, that sort of thing. And then we dive into nutrition, GI health, detox, nervous system, hormones, fitness and exercise, and mental, emotional, health as well, because that's quite crucial, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
And because animals live with humans. So no judgment of any human, because we're all human and we all, we have a big brain, so we make a mountain out of everything.
Out of everything.
Yeah, that's just human nature.
Yeah.
So there are the lectures, and then every week I'm also doing Q&A sessions, and they're live, where people can ask, whatever questions they have. And there's also a community platform where they can, kind of like Facebook. It's not on Facebook, but kind of like a private group.
Right.
So basically, people get support. They can ask their questions. They can ask for clarification. They can bring questions they have about their animals that they may not be able to ask their vet because the vet doesn't have time. So basically, I'm trying to, with the course, I'm basically filling a little bit of the gap between, overworked veterinarians and pet parents who are looking for more answers. And I also find that, in more of a course Q&A sort of setting, there's also more calmness and people can absorb things a little bit more, because usually when the animal is there, if the animal is stressed, then their person can't listen as well. So, it's a bit more stressful situation. And so in these Q&As, we're having a lot of fun. I mean, so far it's going really well. I have a really good group of people and highly educated people already, which is kind of blowing my mind. So we're going really deep with everything, and they're asking amazing questions.
That's awesome. Lori's putting up some stuff for everybody to follow if so that they can contact you.
Mm-hmm.
If you were, so I'm going to kind of shift a little bit and let's talk about all of we can't talk about all of the health problems that animals are having, but I told someone the other day that I thought 90% of the dogs that I see are in some kind of health. I don't know if I want to go so far as crisis, but between the diabetes, the skin problems, the overweight dogs, what do you see a lot of? That's what I see a lot of. I see a lot of diabetic dogs now. I see skin problems. That's what I had today, was just this, or I mean, you could smell the yeast coming off this dog. It was really bad. I could still smell it, I think.
It's kind of lingers.
Yeah. I keep going, is it in my hair? I could still smell it. But I think people are, when I spoke with the client today, I said, this is an epidemic. I see this every day. He was shocked, thought that his dog was the only one suffering this. So what do you see a lot of?
Yeah, skin and more skin, and then more skin, and then GI, a lot of GI issues as well.
Do you think those two things are connected?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. But it just seems to be worse and worse. A lot of dogs that are diagnosed with IBD, which is such a cop-out diagnosis in my opinion, because it just tells you there's inflammation, but it doesn't tell you anything else. It doesn't tell you anything about the cause, because it could be parasites, could be a microbial imbalance, it could be leaky gut, it could be a hormone imbalance that is causing it, because dogs that have Addison's disease or have low cortisol levels, they tend to have more GI issues. Hello.
There's 3 of those running around here somewhere. These were my bottle babies that I foster failed. That's Batman.
Yeah.
But I foster failed them. So big loser.
They're lucky. They're very lucky.
They are very lucky. I haven't kicked them out yet. They are driving me crazy. This one can open cupboards and get into things, and
well, they need entertainment, so
they're definitely finding ways to entertain themselves. But I don't think I realized, like, I've always had cats, but 3 kittens, these guys, I got them, they're all when they were like a day to 2. They're not siblings by that, but yeah, they're crazy. So anyway,
anyways, Thomas is asking, what is IBD? That's inflammatory bowel disease. So basically any animal that has recurrent chronic GI issues, they just basically label them with the IBD. But oftentimes they just don't do all the testing that is really necessary to figure out what the underlying cause is, because, anything, in my opinion, anything that breaks should be able to be fixed. Although in this current environment, and to come back to your question about the epidemic of things, definitely health for animals has gotten a lot worse, and it's become more and more difficult to actually stay healthy. And that's not just for animals, that goes for humans as well. I mean, a lot of diseases are increasing significantly. Cancer rate has gone up, hugely. Obviously, skin issues, GI issues have gone up, behavior issues have gone up, dental disease. Did I say weight? Obesity is skyrocketing. And the same is true in humans as well. There's been such an increase in chronic diseases. I think 1 in 4 Americans has one chronic disease, and 1 in 6 Americans, I believe, has 2 or more chronic diseases. I mean, in this environment with all the toxins and the exposure to, whatever's going on, and then the stress that we've all experienced now from this crazy pandemic and all of that, that's all affected all of us. And so it's becoming more and more challenging to stay healthy, and that's why it's even more crucial to be extremely proactive. Whereas years ago you could still feed a dog kibble and he would still live to 20. Nowadays, there's no chance of that. I mean, that's not going to happen, because even the puppies that are born nowadays, they're already compromised.
Yeah.
They're just not healthy anymore.
That you bring up, because I've been in this industry now 36 years, and I used to say that by the time your dog is 3, I can look at its history. I can see the food he's eating. I can see all the metronidazole he's been on. I can see all of this stuff. And then I can go, by the time your dog is 3, there's going to be problems. But that's not the case anymore. Now it's 6 months old, 4 months old, not even a year. And I'm seeing the bacterial infections and the skin problems and the IBD, which, whatever that is. But all of that stuff, the anxiety, I never, ever met a dog with anxiety before till the last, I want to say 10 years. Prior to that, we never, other than 4th of July anxiety, people would come in for their ACE promethazine during the 4th of July, but we didn't have these like horrible separation. Like you can't even, leave to go to your mailbox, or your dog can't survive. Which is going to bring me to something I want to talk a little bit about. It's a situation with a dog that, as a puppy, she started coming to me and she had anxiety from day one. She still has anxiety. I'm just curious what you think about this. So she had anxiety, horrible anxiety, separation from her mom. Then even when she was in the back after a couple of days of boarding, just anxiety. And then she started with she can't eat this or she'll throw up. She can't eat this or she'll have diarrhea. She that and the other thing. And now it's gotten so, but she's switched the food and has finally got the dog on a food that I wouldn't particularly prefer. It's a subscription food, not a prescription, a subscription. I'm sure you'll know.
Okay. What's the difference?
Well, the prescriptions are the ones that Hills and Royal Canin, right?
Okay.
The prescription diets. She's on a subscription, like Just Food for Dogs, Nom Nom.
Oh, okay, one of those. Oh, okay. Like a mail order food.
Yeah. And so
okay.
Now the dog's having chronic hot spots. I mean, the hot spots are so bad. But my question to you is, do you think that the severe anxiety was a beginning stage of us? We should have been paying attention. Like, this anxiety lies within the gut. Have you looked into that at all?
Well, I mean, it is all related. The gut microbiome, which is all the microbes that make that community, in the gut. They make a lot of nutrients, including neurotransmitters. And so if an animal has a microbiome that is imbalanced, where certain microbial groups are elevated and others not present even, that can cause imbalances in the brain as a result. And in humans, we know that if the microbiome is not, healthy, when the humans develop, when the babies develop, I think up to about 5 years, their neural development is not as good. So their brain doesn't develop properly. And they, past a certain point, when the brain stops with a, heavy duty development, with puppies, that would be earlier. That would probably be around, I don't know. I mean, they go through puberty at 6 months of age. 6 to 8 months. So it would be early on in life. So if they have a microbiome that's imbalanced at that age, they will never actually properly develop their brain. And once that, big development phase is over, they can never catch up.
Wow.
So they're not able to normalize, basically. So that's why it's so important to make sure that the gut is really healthy from, very early on. And that's why I send all of my puppy patients home with fecal capsules to really make sure they have a good microbiome, because God knows what they got from mom.
Yeah.
And then all the dewormers and anti-diarrhea remedies that they get, if they have diarrhea. So I do everything I possibly can to make sure that gut is healthy so that they can have a better developed brain. But it's not just the brain that develops in these puppies, it's their hormone glands as well. And I just wonder if they just have hormonal glands that are not properly developed either, and they don't make enough hormones. And then as a result, that also affects behavior, because anxiety is related to lack of or deficiency of thyroid hormone, for example. So any dog with behavior challenges, I would probably have a look at the hormone levels, and not just thyroid, but also adrenal hormones like cortisol.
Yeah.
Have a look at that, especially when they have diarrhea and GI issues. That's definitely a place that I always look.
I try to get people to focus on not just saying it's no big deal, because a lot of the things get pushed aside, like, oh, she just has separation anxiety because she loves me so much. I hear that a lot, like, she loves me so much that I can see happen, but there's an extreme level of just nervousness that I see in some of the dogs nowadays that are just, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. And I hate that we just push it aside like it's nothing. I think it's the beginning of, we should really be paying attention to the gut at that point. But I love what you say about the puppies, because I always say, listen, when you go to your vet with your puppy, there's two choices that vet has. Well, I shouldn't say choice, but they either are going to set you up for success or they're going to set you up for failure. And you have to know the choices that people are making, the veterinarians making, and why they're making that, right? Because a lot of times people think antibiotics, I guess this is a good question for you. Do you think antibiotics are completely harmless?
No, but they can be necessary at some time, to kind of save an animal's life, but they're definitely not harmless. And that's, what I'm trying to do with this course, is educating people so that they know some of these things and they know what to ask, because I do hear a lot where people feel like they're being bullied into something.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And, they're afraid of going to the vet because they think the vet is going to force them to do something that they don't want for their animals. And, I want people to know that it's always your animal, it's always your responsibility and your choice. So if you don't want something that a vet is trying to push on you, you can say no, and you should say no. Or you can, and be polite about it. You can just say, I want to do a little more research on that, I'll get back with you. Or you can say, well, no, not today. And if they keep pushing, you can say, I don't really want to talk about this anymore, thank you so much for caring. Because veterinarians care. And I myself, I have ideas about things, and maybe I come across a bit pushy to somebody that may feel that way because I'm telling them what I know and what I think is right. I don't, but I'm right. I never say that, and I always want people to question whatever I say. I don't want to, people to just blindly follow what I recommend either. But if we're convinced of something, then we can come across maybe a little bit like, a little bit stronger than somebody may be able to handle, and so there's always care. I mean, veterinarians always care, but we can't say no. You don't have to do something, because in the end, you're the one paying for it.
Yeah.
So if you're not wanting to pay for something, you can say no. And if it gets too much, if worst comes to worst, walk out.
Yeah.
you
You have to
know.
be your pet's advocate. That's why
Yeah.
I come on here with these vets that I recommend to you guys, is because these veterinarians are telling you it's okay to say no. And
Hmm.
if it's not okay, if you're veterinarian, I was bullied by a veterinarian not too long ago. It was crazy.
Hmm.
It was crazy over a Bordetella vaccine, and I was trying to be very, very nice. So I get it. And this is,
Hmm.
and I'm somebody who's really up on this, and it made me very uncomfortable. Thomas wants to know, should you get the PETS vaccine every 3 years?
Well, it depends on what vaccine you're talking about. Rabies in the United States is required by law every 3 years in healthy animals. Certain states will allow for medical exemption. Illinois is one of those. So if I feel that an animal is not healthy enough, I will write them a medical exemption letter, and then they don't have to get the vaccine. Um, and that's really the only vaccine that is required. None of the other vaccines are required by law. Certain, boarding places, groomers, etc., they may require certain other vaccines for you to board, but it's not a law. It's just their rules, and they are obviously allowed to refuse service if your dog doesn't have a certain vaccine on board. But it's definitely not a law, and no veterinarian can push you into giving Bordetella or distemper parvo or any of the other ones. Rabies is the only one. But even so, a veterinarian should not really be pushing any vaccine on anybody, because you're the, animal's guardian, and you're responsible for their health. But of course, if you break the law and you don't get the vaccine, then you can be fined, and then can be forced to have your animal vaccinated. Certain clinics will not see an animal if they are not up to date on rabies vaccines, and that's again their own internal regulations that they make, because oftentimes they also want to protect their staff. They don't want to get into a rabies situation. Emergency veterinary hospitals, they will always see an animal even if they're not up to date on rabies vaccines. But for example, if you need a dental or something like that from a conventional vet, they may refuse service. They may refuse to see your animal based on that.
But don't
So
assume. Just, we can't assume. Call around. Like, I know I'm one of very few boarding facilities that doesn't require like the Bordetella vaccine. I have to require the rabies. There's no way around it. But you
mhm,
have to call around if that's the choice you decide to do. Don't just
mhm,
think because one boarding facility requires it that we all do, because there are a lot of them, and the Chicago area actually has quite a few boarding facilities
mhm,
that don't require certain vaccines. But
mhm.
and then you have to check with your state, like Dr. Sitter said, because I know Delaware, actually, you can get the titer test now for your rabies. It's the only state.
Well, only if you have an exemption letter, a
Oh, you have
medical
to have the
exemption letter.
exemption on top of it. Oh, I did
Yeah,
not.
it's not, you can't just, yeah, I'd have to double check if anything changed, because I know a lot of people are working on changing the rabies laws.
Yeah.
So something may have changed, but last time I checked, which was a few months ago, I have to admit, you had to have a medical exemption letter.
Do you
Yeah.
know what, because California can get a medical exemption letter, but it's interesting to me. And Betsy brings this up a little bit about the whether or not your pet is healthy or not, right? So I
Mhm.
have always thought that, if my dog has an inflamed ear, then he's not healthy and shouldn't be
Right.
vaccinated. But for the medical exemption, is it like very strict? Is it cancer? Is it that kind of stuff? Or is it anything that the veterinarian deems unhealthy?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've never been questioned, and I hope that will also never happen,
Yeah.
because I tend to be much more lenient, whereas other vets, they will treat the animal, and then when the animal is feeling better, like for example, they will treat them for allergies or something like that, and then the allergies are gone, and then they vaccinate them. For example, if I see an animal that has a history of allergies, even if they don't have allergies right in the moment where I see them, I will not I will not recommend vaccines, because I don't want to re-trigger the whole thing that they healed.
Right.
So, to me, an animal that has an allergic tendency is not a healthy animal, and can easily be thrown off. And why would I heal it to then just throw it off again? I mean, that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, if worse comes to worse, I could probably get into trouble with that a little bit, but I think I should be able to justify it. But I am definitely more lenient, and, to me, allergies and any sort of immunologic issues are definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't want
Oh,
to.
we see it all the time. Dogs going into veterinary hospital, cats going in and still getting a vaccine, even though the cat went in, because that's what always gets me is he made the appointment because he was ill. So then right here in his office, he's not sick enough to get, I mean, he can get the rabies vaccine, but he came in because he was sick. So
Right.
it just seems like right then and there is the answer, whether the dog should be getting vaccinated or not.
Right.
I had a
Well,
client.
the thing is, a lot of veterinarians, they're just not aware that vaccine adverse reactions actually happen. Or they say, I've never seen one in like 30 years or something like that. I'm like, yeah, well, what about all these animals that develop things 2 months later? Nobody's relating it back to the vaccine, unfortunately, because it's been 2 months already. But,
Yep.
there's long-term side effects.
I have that question. I have that conversation with a lot of my clients. Let's go back a couple months. What all of a sudden this just, they got a hot spot, and I'll say, well, what happened in the last month? Oh, nothing. And then slowly they'll be, well, I mean, he got a rabies vaccine, but that was like a month ago. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Exactly.
let's visit that for a little bit. But it's really hard to get people to think that, because they think that if you're going to have a reaction to a vaccine, it should be instantly. And if it's not, then it's not the cause of it. And that's hard to think, that the body can't be starting to have a reaction as it's responding to it, right? It's very
Yeah, and that's where education comes in. And, you're doing a whole lot to educate people. And thank you so much for all the work that you do. It's really incredible. You're such an advocate for animals, and you're educating people this way. And yeah, you're really incredible.
I can't do it without the veterinarians that you guys have all been so great to come on, because I'm a groomer, and trust me, I get it. I tell my clients all the time, look, I get it. Your groomer said this and your veterinarian said this. Like, you're going to want to listen to your veterinarian. So you guys have been such a support to help, and it just kind of works. That's why I sent you an email the other day saying I wish people understood the benefit, and vets. I wish vets would understand the benefit of working with their groomer, because the three, I think, makes the perfect trifecta, right? You have your veterinarian, the groomer. We see groomers. I mean, we see dogs, once a month sometimes. Sometimes I see them twice a month. And so we can catch something, and, talk with the veterinarian about it. But so many veterinarians, sadly, just think we're a bunch of idiots. I don't know. So they don't, your groomer said. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I love.
Well, I mean, you're kind of a special groomer that way, because you're doing things more holistically already. So, if somebody from you came and said something, it would be different than if it came from somebody is a little more conventional too, because, I trust that you see certain things and you have experience and all that. So you're definitely, you can't compare yourself with other groomers so much. You're kind of like your own unique brand and breed.
Well, it's interesting because I'm so interested in skin and coat and ears and like all the stuff that would require bathing and grooming. I tell people all the time, my favorite thing to do is bathe dogs. Just put me in the bathing area all day long. I will bathe 30 dogs a day. I love it, especially the more they have a skin problem. I'm like, yeah, I want to get in there.
Oh, it's so nice that you have that ozone thing. I think that's really cool. Is it like a bubbling mat that you put them in and then you soak them?
There's two parts of it. So they go into a whole tub of ozone, but then then I also have another one that's connected to, so it's a rinse. It's an ozone
Oh,
rinse. It
okay.
comes straight
Mhm.
out when we're rinsing
Yeah.
them. So yeah, I love it. It actually makes my hands feel really good too. So, cause
Oh,
I
yeah.
bathe, I'll, in a day, I'll bathe 30 dogs in a day. My hands
Mhm.
get so dry, but now that I'm using a lot more ozone, it's better. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but really that's just another, I don't want to call it a band-aid, but I know that giving ozone, I can't, what am I going to do? Give your dog an ozone bath for the rest of his life? Let's figure out why he has these skin problems. Like that's what I'm there to help alleviate some
Mhm.
of the discomfort, but it's not the cause. And
No,
trying,
but you can't underestimate the healing power that comes from ozone because you're adding more oxygen to the system,
sure.
to the skin, so it can actually heal. Whereas, for example, if you do like a antimicrobial shampoo, you're just killing the microbes, but you're not really actually doing anything for the skin.
Yeah.
With the ozone, though, what you're doing is you're providing more oxygen to the skin cells so that they can function better.
Yeah.
So you're actually helping the healing process, and you're
Yeah.
helping to support the body.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way than using the
mhm,
ozone, but I just, it's hard when you see these dogs that I see the ozone helping and then they go home and eat kibble. I'm like, well,
mhm, yeah,
help, but I
yeah.
like
But
it.
that's the education part. You take people where they are in
Yeah,
their journey. I mean, we all started somewhere.
I
And
eat
so you just
kibble.
educate them, and I mean that's what you're doing, and that's you're perfect, person. You can plant a seed.
Yeah,
You can ask them, well, have you ever thought of blah blah blah, and then maybe they'll think about it down the road, or they research it, and so
yeah. Well,
you're in a
we're
good
getting there.
position.
Little bit by little bit. Oh, you are privileged, Betsy. I'm so
Hi,
jealous.
Betsy.
I am so jealous. You have no idea. Uh, I just, I mean, I have the I get to speak with you guys all, but all the most of the vets that I recommend are so far away from me that although my son, I've told you my son, and if he needs a vet, you're pretty close to them. They're in Chicago, but you're about an hour and a half. She's always thinking outside of the box, makes me question everything between her book, course, and personal contact. I learn constantly. She is brilliant, Betsy. It's true. It's true. And I know
Oh,
we all,
poor Betsy though, because she always gets her brain. She tells me something, and then I start questioning everything she says, and then she goes home like, uh.
uh,
But it's just funny. I find it very entertaining. Sorry, Betsy.
but that's what a good holistic veterinarian, that's why when people say, oh, I have a holistic veterinarian and she said that I should just feed this kibble and give some steroids and this herb, and I'm like, it might not be quite the holistic veterinarian we're looking for, because there's so much
Mm,
that's not happening there, right? And a good holistic veterinarian will ask all those questions, because how would you be able to completely understand if we didn't ask more questions, right?
mm,
And figuring out, I just had a guy bring a dog to me, and the dog has some neurological problems that he's been dealing with a neurologist with, but he took the dog out for a walk, and when he brought the dog in, the dog was shaking a little bit, and then he thought it was because it was cold out, but the next day it was warm out and he got the same reaction. And I started asking him if he thought maybe it's coyote season. I mean, it's breeding, they're mating right now, so there's a lot of coyotes in our area and they're howling everywhere. And as soon as I said that, he said, oh my gosh, I think that's what it is. We went to this different park and he was freaked out even when I got out of the car. So that's why it's so important to start communicating everything, every detail that you think isn't a detail. A good holistic veterinarian will pick up on that and say, wait a second, let's look at this. So,
mm. Well, yeah, and keeping a diary of things. I know, just planting a whole garden. So am I gonna reap some vegetables from that, Betsy? Anyways, where were we? Oh, yes. Yeah, keeping a diary is really good. And I have to be honest, one of my pet peeves is when people come and say, oh yeah, I'm giving that supplement that you gave me, these blue pills or brown pills or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, that's one of my pet peeves. People just remember what you're actually giving your animals if you don't write it down and bring a list to your vet, because
Oh,
it's challenging, because I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I don't know which one you're talking about, so it's kind of important to know
to
the
know
names, how much you're giving, and all of that good stuff. So
that's such a good because on a whole different level, I will give people some samples of good dog foods, something that they want to try, like a small batch or something, and I put them in little baggies, and then it'll say the name of it, but they throw the bag away. Then they come back and say, well, it was the little brown one in the freezer.
yeah. Like, that was helpful.
Yeah. So you're right. Keeping a journal. I don't know where the background noise is coming from, but I heard it too.
Oh, really? I'm
Um,
not hearing anything.
I heard a little bit, but I don't know where it's coming from. I'm so sorry. We have some tech support behind us. Maybe she can help us out a little bit. And if it's me, just let me know, because I'm not techie and it could be me. But yeah, keeping a journal, such good advice. Knowing, and you know what's so good about keeping, it's me. I've been told it's me.
Mm.
Well, huh.
Well, yeah, because oftentimes we will forget, what happened, and so it's really good to keep a diary, with dates and things that you changed, things that happened. How's the home life going? Did you have a fight with your partner, or did you come home late, or did you travel? For example, today I talked to a client whose dog had diarrhea, and it was the second time in a few months now, and we she kind of put two and two together and realized that it was both times after one of them left to travel and then came back. Whether that's what really triggered it, who knows? But in any case, it can be helpful. And again, oftentimes we forget,
Yeah.
or we don't. So,
Well, apparently
well, I have feedback too.
we both. I don't.
Well,
I
let's
don't know
just
how to.
blame it on Redstream,
Yeah,
on
it's
whatever
their
the platform is. I'm blaming it on the platform because we
it's the
were
platform
fine.
for sure. The journals are so important in keeping things down, because sometimes we can't. You have like getting the blood work and having that there so that you have a baseline, right? Know what your dog's normal is. Because a lot of times, and we could talk about that for a few minutes before I'm going to make sure I let you go, because I know it's late in Chicago and you've probably been working all day. But that those baselines of knowing, right? Because every dog's temperature is why don't we just do this? What's the normal average temperature?
Well, for dogs, it's supposed to be 100 to 102. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's their normal temperature. But
yeah,
that's like 2 degrees difference. That's a big difference, really. But it depends. Sometimes when they're excited and or
yeah,
nervous, the temperature will go up. So it probably be good for people to actually measure the basal temperature of a dog at home,
yeah,
to see what it's at. Because sometimes in older animals, I see temperatures that are in the 99 range, and I'm like, that's too low. It should be higher.
yeah,
Uh, because temperature, with every degree of temperature that's lowered, the metabolic rate, is lower. So all the biochemical processes will happen more slowly. And it's a significant jump, 1 degree. So it's important for the temperature to be, good. For example, um, chickens, they have a body temperature of 103, if I remember correctly. And at that temperature, salmonella actually doesn't survive.
oh
So
really?
if you're getting chicken eggs that have salmonella, it probably is that the chicken's body temperature was too low, and that would be affected by what they eat, their environment, and so on. And that's probably also why you would be more likely to get salmonella from chickens that are, battery caged
Yeah.
worse versus the chickens that are living out in the pasture.
That's
Yeah.
very interesting. When you think about all the fear that has been put into feeding raw diets to dogs, that they're going to get salmonella and die. And yet, I know their temperature isn't 103, but they do have a much higher temperature than we do. I wonder if that has some effect on you know,
Well,
And
salmonella gets killed in dogs because of the stomach acid.
the acids. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have stomach acid that is really low. So if you were to actually stick your hands into the stomach of a dog that, in that acid, it would burn your skin.
Oh, wow.
That's how acidic it is, and so a lot of these pathogens don't survive.
Yeah.
Plus, dogs and cats have a very short digestive tract, so things kind of move through more quickly, and
Yeah.
so these pathogens can't really set up shop all that well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, compared to kibble diets and other types of processed diets, the risk of getting salmonella from a dog that's on a raw diet is pretty much zero. And the recalls for pathogens has been from other, from processed foods and not from raw for the most part.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
can't remember all the numbers, but it's
They
not
found,
nearly what they say.
yeah, in the so much salmonella in the kibble. It's interesting.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, not though, well, one of the reasons I wanted to keep these kitties is because I bottle fed them raw unpasteurized goat's milk from day one. And then they went straight on to a raw species appropriate diet. And it's kind of my own interesting little study I'm doing. I want to see if I can get the oldest living cat in the world was 38 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if I can have an older than 38-year-old cat if she starts off straight onto, so I have 3 of them.
So you just have to live to that age, though. You have to live to see it.
That's what I told my husband. I said, if we adopt these 3 cats, you realize they could outlive me if I get my wish. They could outlive me. And so then he told me to stop eating brownies, which probably isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping eating brownies. So
Yeah.
I eat a lot of healthy food, but I can't give up brownies. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it will be interesting if I can get these cats. The Cream Puff was the name of the cat that lived to be 38. And he apparently fed tuna and asparagus. So I don't, go figure.
Well, asparagus is a diuretic, so maybe it kept the kidneys going.
I wondered that. I'm like, because I don't know if that was a thought out process or if it just happened that he had a lot of asparagus and
Yeah.
I don't know, but that was my first thought is, wow, asparagus for cats, considering how many of them die from kidney failure and have bladder problems. It was interesting. He had 2 cats. They both lived into their 30s.
But the thing is, 38 years ago, that was 1990, 1980 something.
Yeah.
Back then the world was not nearly as polluted as it was now, because now with each generation, health is going down.
Yep.
And because animals don't live nearly as long as we do, we see those changes happening much faster. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Patinger cats.
No.
The Patinger cats, they lived in the 1940s. So Patinger was a doctor. He was an MD, and he worked with people who had tuberculosis. And one of the treatments that they were using for these people was adrenal extract from cats. So when people around the area figured that out, that he was using cats to help treat the people, they were starting to dump cats at his doorstep. So he ended up with 900 cats. And that was in the 1940s.
Wow.
And because he had so many cats, he couldn't really feed them all a raw diet. So some of them were getting a little bit of cooked food diet, still mixed with raw milk. And he started to see changes in these cats. So he started to do a study, and you can find that information online too. You can Google Pottinger's cats, and you'll find a video for people who are interested. But in any ways, so he had 2 groups. One group was just raw fed, and they stayed raw fed their whole life. And then he had the second group who was getting, I think, 2/3 cooked, and then 1/3 raw goat milk, or raw milk, not goat milk, but milk. And what he started to see is with the group who was completely raw fed, they stayed healthy from one generation to another. And then the ones that were fed a cooked food diet, they started to decline with each generation. So each generation was getting worse until the 3rd generation, who was supposed to make the 4th generation, didn't actually make the 4th generation. So they had a lot of stillborn. You know, they didn't even get pregnant. They had a lot of issues. And so, it only took three generations to basically make them fertile.
Wow.
And that was cooked food in the 1940s that still didn't have all the toxins in it that we see now. So, at that time, that cooked food diet was probably pretty decent compared to what we feed.
That says so much about what we're both experiencing with all of the
Mm-hmm.
the generationally. I'm watching them get sicker and sicker and sicker and younger. The golden retriever's lifespan just got reduced by like 5 years. I'm watching it before my very eyes. People come into me. I had the lady today I told you with the worst case I've seen in a very, very long time. And she says, well, he's already 8.
Yeah, right.
Like that's the oldest, like it's not her fault. It's just that's what's happening is we're considering 8 to be an old senior dog that has 1 foot in the grave. And I'm looking at this 8-year-old going, oh no, he's got years ahead of him. Let's get him to the right veterinarian and get him some help. So, but anyway, I see now you're planting seeds with me. I can't wait to go look all this. I can't believe how did I not know of pot? I'm always looking at.
I don't know. I'm surprised too. I would have thought that you knew, but
I don't know. Oh my gosh. Disciple of Canadian dentist and diet food advocate. I'm so interested now. I've got something to do tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lori has put up everything for you all that are listening. So I hope I can't encourage you enough to sign up with Dr. Suter's course that she has available for you now, because, I don't even know how much it is, but I can tell you that it will have valuable information that will probably save you thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of you raising not just one dog or one cat, but generations. You can take that information. I don't think that it will change much. And like Dr. Suter says, it's really hard to get into your veterinarian right now. It is. I can't even. I know vets all over. I called one the other day, and for a client, and she's not taking any new clients. And so, I really, really encourage you to be proactive before you find yourself in a situation where you don't have the answers and you can't get into your veterinarian. And even the emergency room vets now are 2 hours deep sometimes. I have had people call me and say, what am I going to do? My dog's going to die and I can't get into a veterinarian, and I obviously can't help them. I don't have access to stuff like that. So sign up for the course. And get yourself educated so that you can make the decisions and figure out what you can do. There's probably a lot of information in there on maybe some home stuff you can do temporarily, right? I mean, I would imagine there's some little kind of tricks and stuff that you can do.
Yeah, we cover a lot. We've gone all over the place already. And the access is lifetime. The Q&As will go on for life. The lectures, there are 8 of them, but I'll probably add some more. Who knows? But yeah.
Well, it's awesome. Dr. Suter, thank you so much for being here, answering some of our questions. I know sometimes people, they don't really ask, so I always ask, I'll educate you guys. We'll do it this way. So this is only our 2nd week of doing this, so I'm excited to see it grow and get more people on. The more we educate, it just kind of grows, right? You educate me, I educate them, they educate more and more, and it just grows until finally, maybe one day, I hope in my lifetime, in your lifetime, we get to see a healthier animals. We can kind of come back at least to them 8 not being old. That just breaks my heart that we think 8 is old.
Yeah, so definitely. No, and thank you what you're doing, because I always say that we're helping to create troublemakers. Well, because the thing is, the more educated somebody is, the more they're going to question what their veterinarian is saying and planting seeds at their vet's office. And that's how change happens. The change is not coming from the veterinary community. It's going to come from people, changing the vets and how they think and all that, because, money votes.
Yeah.
Money
Well,
speaks.
I will say one more thing. I know a lot of suicides in veterinary medicine. There's a lot of Dr. Suter said
Yeah.
she went through it where she just burned out. I got to tell you, I know one veterinarian that I have talked to. She's going to be on the show eventually, but she, same kind of thing. She was just so burnt out on not able to heal. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what she wanted to be, is a healer and someone who could go in and heal. And it wasn't until she went into holistic medicine that she felt like she was actually making a difference. And so my point is, to anybody who isn't seeing a holistic veterinarian and you're afraid to speak up, you may be actually saving that veterinarian from burnout if you can get her to look, or him to look at things a little bit different. So don't be afraid to speak out up about holistic stuff
Mm-hmm.
that may have worked for you in the past, because I know vets who are thankful that they finally saw it
Mm-hmm.
in a different light. So you
But
can,
make sure you be kind,
yes,
because they're all doing the best they can. And, same for vet techs and receptionists. They're doing the best they can. And sometimes when things fall through the cracks, just call back and say, hey, how's it going? And bring a treat once in a while. They love that.
it's
Because
hard.
we're all burned out.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunately
Yeah.
how it
Vets
is
are
right
getting
now.
blamed for everything, and it's hard. It's really, really
Yeah.
hard. So,
Yeah.
so
But thank you so much for what you're doing, Carrie, and thanks to everybody who's listening in and spreading the word about, the good stuff.
yep.
It's important, and that's how things change. So one
Yeah.
little step at a time, which is
Yep.
good. But
It
we're making a movement out of it.
little bit by little bit. I just, a few years ago, I wouldn't even have thought I could meet holistic veterinarians. I didn't think you guys existed. I guess
Mm-hmm.
just me over here by myself. But thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thank you for coming on and chit-chatting with us. If you haven't met Dr. Sutter before, I'm excited that you have got to meet her. She has a fabulous book out called Everything That Your Vet Never Told You. I highly recommend you read it. It's a very interesting read. If you are a client at the spa, I have a few of her books over there. You're welcome to come by and get one. And I'm going to let you go for the evening, but thank you again. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, right back at you.
Have a good night.
Carrie.
Hopefully I'll
All
see you in
right.
a couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, sounds
Yep.
good. I look forward to it.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye, everyone. Good
Bye.
night.